as a planet. We get an immune system as a planet from interstellar parasites like the nothing.
Yeah.
We get an immune system as a planet when we have large groups doing this actively and coherently and together. And this also relates to our luciddreamteam.com that Jake is in part of and now Dolly is helping coordinate. So all of these projects.
This is a revolved three-dimensional sine wave making the Phi's ray fire. Notice that in this geometry, the waves literally have permission to approach center.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It's Dan Winter and Jake Astral Urma and Alobar Jones from Australia. We've got the best astral shaman gurus, teachers of astral coherence in the world right here. And have we got a story to tell? Thanks for coming, guys. So, Alobar just did this amazing story about taking apart the time sphere.
Yeah, no, our team, thanks for the intro. That's the hottest intro I've had all year. Look, our team, I have a team of astral projectors. We fly around beating up the cabal, right? And it's a mission creep. It's, it started as one idea and it's just taken on a life of its own as to what we're actually up to these days. And now we're at a point where we've found an off-world manipulation of time.
Exactly.
They've manipulated time through the whole solar system, which is it's stunning engineering, but it's also not here to help us.
And what's the physics? Where's the physics here? And so Alobar asked all the right questions in that film he made including about, well, the Mayan time star and the Mayan study of, repairing the fabric of time, and the Thoth agenda of the Templars, which is repair the fabric of time. Man, we have a way to understand this story once we understand that time is that experience of spin rate, which enables us to implode to intense spin rate. And when you're at intense spin rate, sometimes called bliss, then the parasites can't eat you. Hello.
Yeah. Well, and that's been the story, and it's true. It's absolutely true. That's been the story forever.
Yeah.
I have and the experience of doing things like that is wonderful. Right?
Yeah.
However, I always thought only a fraction of the population's only ever going to get there, or even going to attempt it.
And both Jake and Alobar are teaching the actual astral coherence, lucid dreaming coherence skill to do these things. Jake is Astral Urma at YouTube, and Alobar Jones has a school called.
See, look, I'm no frills about everything, so it's called Alobar Jones Astral Projection Course, right? I skipped out on calling it, quantum energetic freedom movement, the buzzword, right?
But your website
I skipped calling it that.
But the website is called.
Look, you want to go on earthguard.world.
That's it. That's perfect. Earthguard. This is what it is. If you have an Earthguard. And so now we're here because we want to teach the Earthguard and related teams, Jake's teams, the science behind, how you deal. And when Alobar said they were manipulating time, what we're here to tell you tonight is that is not a mystery. You can understand the physics. And part of that story we're going to go into tonight has to do with the story of the hollow metal parasitic moon and how it got here from the Andromedans. And Jake is going to help me with that part of the story. Jake, do you remember when, wasn't it Swaru early on was doing sort of a history of the moon? And Tim Med was talking about that when she learned that from Swaru before she introduced Swaru to Gosha, for example, history of the moon and the.
Yeah, I believe the moon was, I think she said that it was built by the Andromedans and the Arcturians. It was a group effort. I'm not sure if it was I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of years ago, but it's extremely old and extremely broke down and busted up, and the nuclear reactors inside of it are failing.
Exactly.
That's why they have the 5G and everything else for the electromagnetic frequencies in order to lower our frequency as frequency suppression systems, because that's what the moon is. It is a frequency suppression system.
Exactly. And that's precisely the story we want in great detail. We want to understand the physics, and I do mean the physics, the actual frequencies of that story. That's where we're going tonight. But first, there was a little bit more warm up here, a little background story here. So, first part of the story I wanted to review briefly with Alobar also and Jake was when Alobar calls this interstellar parasite problem, he calls it the nothing.
The great nothing, the
Thank you.
great nothing. He's
Great. Yeah.
because he wants all the grandeur in the world, but the emperor has no clothes. He is a nothing. I mean,
This is
I interviewed him on the Earth Guard site, and he is the biggest dork you will ever meet. Like, I'm like,
see,
seriously, like I feel bad, and I need things. I need to absorb things to in order to keep living, and so my life is more valuable than every other species and every other galaxy all put together. My existence is more important than all of them.
now
And
welcome,
that's the problem. That's
welcome to
where
the
we're
nothing.
at.
Now we want to draw a direct parallel to that and Jake's story, which is Jake's was among other things says I've learned a lot from him, describing the moment when Akhenaten Moses ate the red pill instead of the blue pill and brought the propaganda of the nothing question mark or what was later called the black sun, Atun, black goo, black cube,
Yeah,
great
yeah.
interstellar
I'm
parasite, which Penny Bradley says is Andromedan AI with the Mitra and locally the Etorthans as a media. So are we talking about the same thing here? What do you think, Jake?
I think there's plenty of overlap,
Yeah.
and I also think I don't know Penny Bradley, tons of respect for her, and I think we're all talking about the same thing. But since we started on our own, we've had to make up all the words that we're encountering, right? All the words. So they're not going to match. But I described the great nothing to somebody else who's been doing this for 35 years, and she goes, "Ah, you're talking about the anti-divinity." And
Ah.
she goes, "Oh," and I said, "Yeah, yeah, we've been fighting the anti-divinity and its machinations." And she said, "Well, I don't know why you would do that. Why didn't you just follow the ascension path and start going into higher spin, as you would say, higher spin rates and more fractal spin rate?" And my answer was, look, only a fraction of people are ever going to do that. Like it's a small number of people are going to do that. I think it's of greater value to conflict with the great nothing. And, you know, when we started, I wasn't sure I was going to last 3 months. Like I didn't. But as it turns out, like the evil we're facing is the flimsiest, weakest, most brittle, mentally retarded child that I can't. There aren't enough swear words
But
for
yet
this.
the
I
biggest
can't.
the biggest parasite and most dangerous parasite in the galaxy, according to Penny Bradley, Mitra, Black Sun, Atun, and
Yeah, yeah, and all of the names apply.
yeah, yeah. And so,
Yeah.
Jake, does that fit with your story then about Atun and
Sure. I feel like I've forgotten more things than I know. But this all came from sun worship. You
uh,
know, all of the religions came from sun worship,
mhm.
and there has to be a duality. So there had to be this black sun, in opposition to this white sun. You know,
Yeah,
um,
and then
so
they end up
I would even debate that. I would even debate that,
well,
right?
they it is pretty much agreed all the ancient religions were sun god religions. So of course, and there had to be a black sun versus, and then that everyone seemed to be clear that this black sun parasite is originally an AI from Andromeda, as Penny Bradley says, and that it was mediated there by the Mitra and locally by the Etorthans, apparently the shapeshifter behind Elena's Thorhan, doing the agenda of the human trafficking, da da da. And
yeah,
giving that was a turning point in Western history. We said many times, all the Western religions then became a conveyor belt into a parasite. And not only are the the Muslims rotating around a black cube where they get infected by the black goo. But also, I just got a new definition from Alobar of the black cube phylacteries we showed graphically in our last video.
No, yeah. I saw your thing the other week where the Jews are praying with a little black cube on their head, and I looked that up. They're called phylacteries, and the only other place they ever use the word phylactery is in Dungeons and Dragons. And I thought, well, this is going right from here. This is going to be good, right? And you'll love this. It's they have these undead wizards who live forever, and they have a little box that they keep souls in that they feed on forever and ever. And that box is called a phylactery. Right? And that's the
Wow,
weak
in the
point
game.
of the million-year-old wizard, right?
Yeah, it's
But you know, it belies this black magic. It's obviously black magic, but remember that black magic is utterly focused on giving life to things that should be dead.
yes,
That's the whole point. So, you know, you get the Egyptian Book of the Living and the Book of the Dead. What's their religion about? It's about giving life to people who should be dead. Right? We are told that, you know, all of the mummies and all that, they're all about eternal life and blah. And we don't understand what people are talking about. We don't get it because we don't have the the science, the instruction kit on what they're actually doing. We're not working with the same physics they're working with or the same goals. But, you know, sacrificing the living to feed the dead is is one of the high points of Jewish religion. The little box is transferring that energy there.
yeah.
And it gets even better because you mentioned Islam and the black box. Because like the whole of Islam is centered around the black box, the Kaaba, or translated the cube, the Kaaba, it's the same word, right? But they're focused on a black cube and the black cube technology. I interviewed Satan last week and he was talking about it. And it's mind control and energy suction. Like those are the two key functions of the black cube. And they're everywhere. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this,
But you wanted to ask about you were you know, there's this whole jumble of words, right, around black sun, black cube, anti-divinity,
black
AI,
goo.
like there's this whole jumble of words. And in my opinion, this is where we're at with it, is that what you're talking about is different steps in a hierarchy.
Mhm.
So they're all the same, they're all the same goal, they're all part of the same team, but you have the anti-divinity who runs the AI. One of the AIs is the black goo, and Harold Kautzweiler
Yes.
speaks perfect volumes on black goo.
Right.
He's the leading researcher on that. But I got hold of him, and it seems like he's forgotten it all, or he just didn't want to talk about it, or something. Our whole team was thoroughly disappointed with Harold
Well,
Kautzweiler and
he
that
said it was
conversation.
basically designed originally to remove anything green on any planet it touched, which is to say
Yep.
life force.
Yeah. No. Well, look, it is a. Well, you had these beautiful sun worship religions, right? And then the meteorite came down, and it was full of this black
Black
goo
goo.
AI. And but you know, the same story is told in Christianity. Lucifer upset God somehow, and he was cast out of heaven and cast down to the earth, right? And so Lucifer was imported. Out of all the other parts of that story, I don't care if God loved him or hated him, he was imported. It's the only real fact in there. Yeah. Now, that is the beginning of good versus evil. And I'll say the original design of our matrix was a party land. Like, you know, souls would travel just like backpackers. They go from Athens to Barcelona to Berlin or whatever they do. And they party there, they dance the dance, they drink the drink, they eat the food, they kiss the girls, whatever, you know, see the monuments, whatever it is you do when you go to a new country, right? And so the originally Earth was designed like that. It's just another stop of learning for these partying souls, right? But And I'll go back to the fourth Hermetic law, which is usually quoted as the as the basis for duality. And in and I would say good and evil is separate from that. You see, it's actually called the law of polarity. I don't know what sort of
Yeah.
translations we're using, but that's what we say in English is the law of polarity. And it's the law of it makes experience possible. It has hot and cold as a polarity. It has gentle and rough as a polarity. It has nice and nasty as a polarity. It has sweet and sour as polarity, and all of these different dimensions. And as you play around in there, that's the experience that you have, right? Because that's the framework that we're working in. And I would say that good and evil was not designed to be part of that.
And we could say
Like,
very simply, to live is the opposite inverse mirror image of evil, which to live L into the I of phi means to embed, and to fail to embed, the opposite of failure to embed electrically defines evil. And
yep,
the nature of the embedding in a cube is opposite to the nature of embedding in a pent. And actually that meteor was later called Lucifer's Eye, and that's going to lead to
yeah.
our story later. So there we go.
Look, yeah, and we go back to the Kaaba again, and it's actually still got a piece of it in the
Yeah.
corner. Like, look it up online, like
Yeah.
the black stone at the Kaaba, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking with Akbar, like I had a client, she got arrested in Qatar, I think it was, right? No, not for, no, and it was basically a shakedown. They just wanted money out of her, right? It was pretty horrible experience. But where was I going with this? Sorry, give me a second.
Well, we know that.
And the demon that possessed her was Akbar. So
Uh,
you know how they say Allahu Akbar all the time?
right.
Akbar is the name of a demon. So like we all know that the Islamic religion focuses on a black cube which feeds off to the anti-divinity, right?
Yes. And
And so sorry, the black cube is an absorption device and a mind and it emits mind control.
and
And when you come within 30 to 50 meters range of that stone, the black stone,
the Kaaba.
the black stone or the solidified version of black goo, like it's a mind control thing, right? And I thought and Islam, when I studied it at university, right? Islam started with a wizard, Muhammad, who was doing great, and then he got hold of I don't know, and then he got hold of a black stone. It changed him, right? And then he was all about peace, and then he decided to send out an army with the black stone, right? Now, it was a small army, it wasn't a large army. And he actually split the army, which you just don't do. You just, like the larger army always wins. So you don't split an army because chances are you'll just lose both of them. But what happens is, like all, 5,000 dudes line up on this side and 5,000 dudes line up on that side. And then the commanders wander up and say, does everybody have to die today? Is there another way we can do this? Can we find something to agree on, right? And, sometimes that works, sometimes that fails. But if you have a mind control device, if you have a black stone, then all of those opposing armies will submit to Islam.
And
And then the thing you can agree on is let's join this army and go and fight somebody else.
and
Let's do that.
when they rotate around it, then they get the black goo infection, obviously, and that creates actually literally desertification. We know, and we also know that that was a super dielectric. The nature of that uh, uh, glass meteorite had bubbled nano gold vapor, platinum group metal, and that's the super dielectric, later called the Philosopher's Stone, which is how the John Dee and Kelly story
Uh,
starts. The physics of
yeah.
that, which is a super dielectric catalyzing isotope transition, which is why when they documented in history with two-thirds of the volume of that stone was gone, the caliph who owned it at the time was called the Mad Caliph because he was eating it as the all the alchemists do, and the physics of that and why he went mad has to do with the black goo story again. So
Yeah.
and again, because ultimately it was the Andromedans who installed the moon here, and the Andromedans who were the source of um, this parasite. We think the black goo parasite, and where our story starts with them. That's going to relate then to our story about the Federation led by the Andromedans at the time. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, look, yeah, got lots to say on that too.
yeah, yeah,
Like, but I just love being able to communicate this with people who understand what the hell it is I'm talking about,
yeah,
who get it.
yeah.
It's so refreshing. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thank
we
you.
want to understand part of where we want to go with this is understand the physics about how manipulating layers of spin density, which is layers of frequency, which ultimately is actually the
Mhm.
Schumann cascade, uh, controls time because access to spin density requires the charge collapse, which happens with the physics of coincidence, which is coupling between adjacent rotations. If they're based on golden ratio called fractality in time, then the coupling between the long wave and the short wave called coincidence is enabled, and that enables the experience of charge collapse, which allows you to experience spin density at the center, sometimes called bliss, etc. And
Mhm.
what the guy in the phylactery cannot control is someone having bliss. And
Well,
so
yeah,
where
when you find love in your heart, when you find bliss, you're just out of their energetic range. They
yeah,
can't touch
exactly.
you.
Exactly. And unfortunately, so they were controlling the solar system with frequencies, and this was called the bridling of the nuclear frequency generators in the moon in the detailed story we're about to review in the slideshow. Um, so I guess so I'm going to click share. So this is called the physics of fractality in time is the slideshow for the evening. It's a it's a keynote here. So this was the email that we kind of started. Well, let's do the first slide here. So
Oh, wow.
the true fractal physics of time. Time is a name for the experience of relative spin rate. Remember, basically, when Einstein said, space-time is bent, that was a very confusing and unhelpful language. The fact is, the reason your wristwatch speeds up when you accelerate toward the speed of light, if you look at my donut, so when you accelerate, some of the inertia of acceleration is translated, translation of vorticity, into increased spin rate, which is why your wristwatch speeds up when you accelerate it. So the space-time is not bent so much as what you might call an etheric drag, that the energy of the ether, which is a superfluid, causes the accelerating torus to accelerate, translate some of that inertia of acceleration into accelerating spin rate, named time. Remember, rotation or spin is the only definition of mass. Obviously, stores inertia. Defined inertia defines mass, but it's also the only definition of time is that spin rate. So as we understand the ability to increase relative access to spin rate, we're going to understand how you can be empowered with fractality in time. And we're going to use the physics of death as an example of how you have to accelerate in time. And this starts with the website goldenmean.info/coincidence, because when these spins are coupled, here's this Mayan calendar. This was your question when you asked the question in your film, Alobar. You'd like to talk to the Mayans about this. Well, here is from Geoff Stray working on the Mayan calendar. He did an approximation. These are golden ratio loops in time. This was from the study of 2012, but and it wasn't actually particularly accurate, but it was a very useful idea that when spins nest like this, the connection between charge rotation is coupled between the long wave and the short wave, because golden ratio fractality enables that charge transfer between the long wave and the short wave, named coincidence. that connection in time, that's the physics of coincidence. And so this is from this book. It's also our friend John Martin,
What a name for a book. I love it.
the little book of coincidence. And notice that this was all based on fractality. We're going to look at the pent fractality of the Venus Mercury orbits, etc. So this is how this email started tonight's conversation. So I was thinking about Alabar's presentation, in which she said, well, gosh, we really got to figure out this time problem.
Yeah, no. Yeah, well, I'll expand a little bit. Like our astral projection team, we found a bubble around our solar system that is built by the Great Nothing, or as you would call him, the Black Sun. And we know that we need to take it down, but there's physics involved in messing with time that escapes us. And so
That's
I'm
where we're going.
a little bit perturbed by,
Exactly. That's our question.
making mistakes.
We gotta so, but in their group,
I'm so glad you watched that and go, I have an answer to Alabar's question.
that's right. I
Thank
did.
you so
Yes.
much.
And so then Alobar actually had a shamanic journey in which they disassembled a nested sphere, which was the mechanism which the bad guys were used to place us in an isolationist time bubble, literally the quarantine. And I think there's a relationship, more than metaphorically, to the physics of our moon, that hollow metal sphere, and what you were nesting with in your shamanic journey there. And that's where we want to go in this conversation. So essentially then, efficient charge collapse spin nest cascade is the only physics of time, spin density, but it's also the only creator of awareness. So if this frequency ratio is called PlanckFire.com, Planck times Golden ratio, gives you the frequencies of the Schumann and implosion and bliss and access to spin density, for example, how to die well. So this physics of time then tells us how time could be controlled in a bubble. And that's where we're going to get to the story of the history of the moon in the case of the generators in the moon, which are the mechanism of the quarantine. And then at the bottom in the Anunnaki history here, it seems the Anunnaki pestilence trapping the Draxiakar Kingu families temporarily within a frequency fence from the hollow metal moon, increasing the Van Allen belt biohazard, which for a short time inhibited the reptilian Kingu and Anunnaki spacecraft from getting in and out of Earth. Long story, summarize.
Yeah, they were talking about that a few years ago. Yeah.
Can I
Go ahead.
pipe in here for a second?
Go ahead.
Because after the Tiamat and the Mars wars, both sides, the reptilians and the Federation, had taken a very hard beating. There were a lot of losses on both sides.
Exactly.
And the Federation was damaged and weak, and they couldn't continue fighting. But knowing that the reptiles were on Earth, they enclosed them there with a 3D matrix with the intention of sorting it all out later. Yes. The matrix is this computer program designed as a hologram that's projected onto a 5D Earth. So when people are saying like, we need to ascend into 5D Earth, no, that's not necessarily it. The Earth is already in 5D. It's just that this large, powerful hologram projector, the moon, it's all a program, and the system is really primitive and digital. It's a caricature of 5D reality.
This is great. That leads exactly where we want to go, Jake. So,
and I've got something that backs that up further. For those people who've been meditating a long time, you may have heard of the space outside of time, or the space within time, or something. There's a few different words for it, right? But in the rest of the galaxy, they run what we call the space outside of time. And you can access the space outside of time inside the bubble, but it's not the common experience that everybody has. And it's a huge dampener for manifestation and coincidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
what you're saying, Jake, is I can concur with parts of it, like that we are in special conditions here in our solar system, in 4 special conditions. And I'm not sure if it's the moon that's projecting it, but we'll look into that. That's holding us in a trap. That's holding us in a a lower vibrational state. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The holograms aren't just light. When powerful enough, they have a great electromagnetic energy, basically a force field, and that force field is the Van Allen bands.
Good.
The Van Allen belts.
Yeah. Corey Good was talking about this a few years ago, saying, that there's a shield around the entire solar system.
Exactly.
But he said it was put up by the good guys to keep the bad guys out. But it doesn't seem to have functioned that way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And it was hacked and turned against us.
Yeah, and that's where we want to go. So far more detail on that, exactly that story, precisely. So we're looking here at our friend Tim Med, the interstellar mediator, who we were working with for many years before she introduced Swaru to Gosha, actually. And then
Wow.
Tim Med then published this book on, and you can download this. It was originally from Tim Med and it was public on the internet. And now this is all part of the article of tonight's conversation. Fractalfield.com/fusion in the blood. And it's the artificial anamorphosis, lifting the veil of the moon. So the history that Jake started here is exactly where we want to go. So as Jake said, we think the Andromedan-led Federation perceived the Anunnaki here as reptilian, the bad guys, quote unquote, whom we think of Enki and Lil running Atlantis at that time, and decided to bomb the hell out of the joint, basically. And as Jake just said, both sides lost in that war, one of those wars, and that one of those wars was, as we think Hancock correctly reports, the flood of the Lesser Dryad when the Tiamat water created the Great Flood. And at that point, as Jake reported, the solar system was falling apart because they tried to nuke the place. Mars lost its atmosphere, Tiamat fell apart, and the Earth's orbit was destabilizing. And the Andromedans, as was their habit, dragged in one of their ancient hollow metal artificial planetoids, because if they didn't stabilize the Earth's orbit at that point,
watery planets are susceptible. They're very unstable. Watery planets are.
Yeah.
They needed that stability that the moon brought in.
Yeah,
the moon was brought in for many different reasons.
Yeah,
there's a lot of different reasons the moon was brought in. It's not just one.
Yeah, and exactly.
Yeah, I've got a few. Yeah, I've got a few reasons why.
Thank you. Yeah, and so the Tiamat was mostly water, fell apart. Earth was losing it, and so the moon's orbital geometry alone is proof of intent. It's obviously not an accident, and but the point is, as in this history described in great detail, thanks to Med Tim and her relationship to Swaru early on. That installed on the moon with nuclear generators, Jake referred to, were these frequency generators, which was called bridling technology. And by bridling, they literally meant to inhibit, exactly what Jake was referring to. And those frequency generators, she even refers to the 50 versus 53 hertz question, which we spent years on, because pure Golden ratio times Planck is 50. But the actual Schumann goes to 53. And every single pyramid we ever measured is 53 hertz, not 50. And now we knew exactly why, that the pure phase conjugate pump wave, which is the reason Schumann cascade powers every pyramid, read pyramid wireless power, and that's coming here, is because you have to use the Schumann cascade as it is on the planet if you want to make wireless power. And all your zero-point energy devices have to use, and the physics of human bliss as well. We'll get there. Anyway, it was called bridling because when they installed those frequency generators, it mutated the natural implosive Schumann cascade, and that controlled in part the orbits of what Jake just referred to, the Van Allen belts. This was explained in the book that remember, the Anunnaki were such klutzes as navigators. They needed their nukes to get through the Van Allen belt, which is why they needed the Ark of the Covenant, which was an implosive capacitor designed by the Syrians to non-destructively contain nuclear power, which if our physicists were such idiots, they would use implosive capacitance to reduce half-life also. But anyway, the Van Allen belts were a limit to the ability of the Anunnaki to come and go. So if you amplified those, were you going to say something, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, you can't go through that wall without technology that can control frequencies.
That's right.
You have to have a certain high level of technology that controls frequencies. And as a soul, your vibration, if your vibration isn't high enough, you can't go through either.
Yeah, beautiful.
Right.
And so what we're saying here,
now that and coming here is a reincarnational trap.
It is. Exactly.
You come here, they drag your frequency down. You think you're coming to Earth to party? But instead, you end up in some sort of prison planet, and everybody's upset with each other, and everybody's making karma with each other, and everybody's making drama. And
But
so when
Right.
you go to leave, you
If you
can't
don't have a
because your
high enough
frequency
vibration,
doesn't make the grade.
yeah.
yeah. And so but again, let's do the physics. I'm the guy for the physics here. The physics is that there is a very particular frequency cascade called Planckfire.com, which creates gravity, which is called charge collapse. And that fractality and spin rates causing that implosion is not just the physics of gravity, it's the physics of bliss, and it is the physics of time. And so nesting those spin rates by that frequency control the layering of the gravitational radii. And that's where we want to go with the slideshow here.
No, no, I'm picking up what you're putting down. This is good. I
Yeah.
like this. Yeah.
So we want to go back then. So we had the radii of the moon so when you create the vortex correctly, what's called charge collapse, the cause of gravity consciousness, everything negentropic and all action at a distance, Planckfire.com, which is now FractalGUT.com, the top unified field physics on the planet. The reason Einstein didn't get it was he knew that he needed infinite non-destructive charge collapse causing gravity, but he didn't know where the charge went at the center. And the physics is that the charge implodes through the Planck threshold, where it's converted to longitudinal, which is what gravity waves are made of, and propagates at golden ratio multiples times the speed of light into that array, the physics of all action at a distance. So that's where the charge goes when it passes through center. It goes into the longitudinal array called the dream spell. And so we're beginning to understand that if you don't have the frequencies for correct charge collapse, you can create a time bubble. And there's many books on this, Spiral Calendar, Carol Ann, and this is the only path out of chaos, obviously, the origin of negentropy. Read the negentropy site at fractalgut.com. And this became my prediction for how the stock market emerges from chaos, which became this successful stock market prediction software, which is why my picture is on Pi the Movie's website about the guy that could predict the stock market, because this is the path out of chaos, that negentropic charge collapse, when I did my origins of Hebrew based on those toroid nesting angles. So obviously, planetary orbitals use that nest not just to stabilize gravity and atmosphere, but to create self-aware suns. And this implosion of frequencies is later called the time star. And we did a lot of work on this with Chrisana Duran. This is another story. And so the point is that golden ratio is the dominant geometry of all orbital mechanics. And that is a smoking gun, because that's the only way you can make gravity and stabilize not just gravity, but consciousness. So the activity of humans to align themselves with those converging rotations, an example is why Agnihotra works at sunrise and sunset. It's called four-wave mixing and phase conjugation, and it creates fertility. It creates negentropy. And a beautiful example of a way to think about how people must learn this lesson is the physics of death. So it is well known that when you die, you're going to see a lattice cobweb tunnel and spiral called the Heinrich-Klüver form constants. And we know exactly why you must see that map at the moment of death, as you're seeing your whole life pass in front of you in 2 seconds flat. It's called compression. And to embed in that array, and that's called lattice cobweb tunnel spiral. And this was depicted well as you enter the pine cone of the moment of death. But what a lot of people don't know is that is exactly the physics of the recursive implosive braiding of DNA in the sequence of superposed spin operations. Your DNA goes from thread to string to rope to fat rope, recursive implosive braiding in the presence of human bliss, which is induced by the same frequency cascade. And here we are measuring that frequency cascade in the EKG coherence, and that frequency cascade from the Schumann in the EEG coherence, measurably triggering that implosive DNA braid. And there's the implosion down the cone, and there's the longitudinal. And that predicts the same frequency cascade measured in university studies to cause dream lucidity. The implosive compression is the physics of lucid dreaming, because it implodes you into that coherent longitudinal array called the dream spell, luciddreamteam.com. So you can see how this is the background for understanding. If somebody's messing with our Schumann harmonics, this is also involves understanding how mercury concentrates the implosion in pyramids and allowing global wireless power. And here are exactly those frequencies measured in the Bosnian pyramid, even up to 28 kilohertz on the roof, and 1 million people a year come there and receive healing negentropy. They get rejuvenated, they get younger. Absolutely, it works. And the reason that pyramid works is because this is that frequency cascade. Look, here's the equation, plongfire.com. Here's the Schumann harmonics, and here's those same frequencies in the brain waves triggering bliss. So obviously, if you can experience that implosive compression, and since this is what the Templars, whose only teacher actually was Thoth, called the repair of the fabric of time, that if you didn't emerge into fractality in time, you couldn't experience that spin density and actually become more conscious. So this is the whole thesis of goldenmean.info/coincidence, and where we wanted to go with this spirosolaris and implosive magnetics and phase conjugate arrays. So let's see. I think we should talk about, I'm going to stop the screen share now. Did I do enough of this? Well, here, just another example that if you walk a figure eight walk, the infinity walk, which measurably eliminates dyslexia, the book Infinity Walk, Deborah Lawrence, Deborah Sundbeck, she's a friend, and you experience the corpus callosum getting hot, you're experiencing that recursive implosive spin density that, because obviously the dyslexic is more creative than most people because there's more wiring across the corpus callosum, but if you can't tighten the slip knot, you cannot sort. That's why the cross crawl motion in the infinity walk measurably virtually eliminates dyslexia because it allows you to sort or compress that implosive point. So there's a lot in this slideshow, and you've seen many of these slides. So I'm gonna end this screen share now. So in summary, the physics of fractality in time, how do we emerge from a bubble that's been created where our spin rates are not fully enabled charge collapse impulsive because we haven't restored fractality in time.
So what you're saying is that all of the magnetic field, all of the Schumann resonance, all of the thoughts and feelings that are part of that, sooner or later they collapse. Like it's just a function that they go back into the waveform. Like they go, and when they go into the waveform, they spread out. And one of the effects of that is gravity, and one of the effects of that is time.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
think
and we're dealing with a poisoned version of it.
We're dealing with a sequence.
I got to tell you a story now. I got to tell you a story now, right?
Just the metaphor of visualize an ice skater pulling in her hands. Now, she can absorb increased spin density only if she pulls in her hands at the right rate.
Right.
And if you can stay back, remember, the Sufi student can only prove to his master that he has pure intention if you can spin without getting dizzy, which is the discipline of keeping your attention at the center point, which is the proof of pure intention, because that's called a shareable wave. Go ahead with your story, Alobar.
No, that's spinning without getting dizzy. Now I get the whirling dervishes. Now I know
Exactly.
why that's a whole.
Yep.
That's a whole religious exercise, is because it's working into this physics that you're describing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to wind the clock back more than 10 years, and I went out to Mexico. In preparation for midsummer in Mexico, for the solstice in Mexico, with the in Palenque, which is a 10 square kilometer temple complex. And I got into the ceremony with the Pope of the Mayan calendar crew. And it's also the world's throat chakra where they built it. And it's and you know, my friends and I got knighted by Gaia at that event. She dubbed me her agent. And you know, we would walk through there, and there's so much information in the stones that, you know, it was a big event, because if you come up to the right stone, it downloads into you, and then you've just got to sit down for an hour and you're a space cadet and you're useless while you integrate that. And it happened to us over and over and over again. Now I meditated. I go, where do I need to be for the big day in 2012, right? And they said, you got to go to Mexico. And I go, okay, I'll be in position then. And then this girl in Melbourne started dating me almost against my will, but took me to Mexico, introduced me to the inner circle of academics called the Time Scientists. And it was awesome. It was awesome. We broke up within 36 hours of the ceremony. Like that was the purpose of that relationship. Um,
Huh.
but okay, here's the meat and potatoes of it, right? What happened was it wasn't the end of the world. They have 17 clocks and 11 of them struck midnight on that time, right? And so as all of those, think of it like as a clock strikes midnight, a gate opens. And then they had 11 gates all coming together at the same time. And it opened portal after portal after a whole chain. It was the only time it's ever been open, or not the only time, but it's the time it's been open, the only time we've seen it in the last 5,000 odd years, right? And so in there's an energy, and I go, I better copy that. I'll have it copied. So I grabbed that. And I'll be walking, and then I spent like 2 months on the beach, not too much, a long time on the beach, separating and then uploading it into the grids of the earth, right? Just all this data, just bit by bit, one file at a time. I was acting like a file transfer from this hard drive to that, right? And, and I had people bring me cold drinks. And when I got too hot, I jumped in the ocean and it was awesome. But as you're talking about it, that particular energy, you've just jogged my memory. That energy is the replacement energy for that sphere. I've just been waiting 13 years to know what to do with the damn thing. Wow.
Part of the story is like the difference between why, as Alobar would say, the anti-divinity. The anti-divinity would like your kids in a metal building with electrosmog and dead air, with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, with zero possibility of imploding the Schumann. It will never get there. Versus if you put your child in a stone circle in an ancient woods, with a sacred space, and all the magnetic lines are alive and there's no electricity. It doesn't take long for your child in there to get access to some wonderful bliss experiences, and absolutely puts that child
reverse entropy.
Yeah, it puts that child beyond the reach of the parasites. Now, that difference is exactly what we're talking about. The child in sacred space has access to the implosive compression called fractality in time, which gives them access to the spin density called awareness, or the next dimension. So that charge collapse enabled is a frequency recipe, but it's more than that. It's literally access to the implosion at the center of spin. It's just like experiencing Kundalini or a dervish turn. It means you need to learn to inhabit a lightning bolt. Well, Jake, what do you think? How are we doing here?
I think you can inhabit a lightning bolt in the astral. I've done it, and it is one of the most fantastic experiences I've ever had.
There you go.
It is a way to control the storm.
Yes. And it's Dannion Brinkley's multiple books on his near-death experience. They both start with inhabiting lightning bolts, just like the movie Powder. Why?
Yeah. There's a black storm. When the black storm comes at you in the astral, if you inhabit a lightning bolt, you become the lightning. Yeah. You can separate yourself into multiple avatars and be more than just one lightning bolt. You can become multiple, and that will calm the storm or control the storm, depending on any way that you look at it. It disintegrates.
It implodes. Yeah. And that's exactly what Kundalini feels like, really. But and Alobar, did you tell your storm steering story then? Was that?
Oh, yeah, no. So I always thought most astral projectors fly solo, and I always had this instinctual feeling that we should fly as a group. And the very first time that I did this, I flew with one other guy, and it's against a cyclone that was going to hit the coast in the next couple of days, right? And we flew together. I probably wouldn't have gotten to the center of the storm at that stage, but and when he got there, we faced a massive chaos demon, and I knew what to do about that, and I took him down. But it was only through teamwork that we're able to actually dissolve the storm. Because the next day, like we went to bed that night, and in the morning they go, "Oh, the news was the storm blew out. There's nothing to worry about. It's just windy tomorrow." Like that was the whole thing. And yeah, but we've been doing this for years. Yeah.
Yeah, and planets where there's no one steering tornadoes deserve tornadoes that don't get steered. And we tell the physics of that very nicely. goldenmean.info/dowsing, all the pictures and graphics. If you watch a shaman steering a tornado, classically, you will see as the shaman says, I'm eating the chucha, which is the anger or the pain of that tornado. The shaman is feeling the tornado as a living body. And the tornado falls in love with the shaman because the shaman feels its pain better than it feels its own pain. And suddenly, if you were watching, you would see bioplasmic streamers from the shaman body imploding into the center of that tornado. And then the shaman's plasma becomes the center of gravity of the tornado. The tornado allows pure intention to steer, which is what your lover does also.
Oh, look, yeah, no, yeah, sex magic's awesome when you can fire it up. Eh? It's just requires a lot of you've got a lot going on when you're casting those spells.
Ultimately, they say you only fall in love with pure intention. What they mean by that is the most shareable wave is precisely what inhabits the most dense spin because it has to be perfectly distributable into that classically fractal array. So what you're looking for is a wave that can survive every node of the array called perfectly shareable wave or pure intention. And that is the most centripetal one. And that's where the greatest mind exists at the center of the tornado within the tornado, the lightning bolt within the lightning bolt, the center of the centripetal force. So we always ask at the end of these things, did we do the happily ever after, or did we do enough practical suggestion here?
Well,
the happily ever
is there any implementable knowledge here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The implementable knowledge in part is, look, when you do the Agnihotra or your bliss ritual or your prayer meditation, if you did it at a magnetic line cross, you're going to get more compression. If you did it at sunrise, sunset, you'll get more yet. If you did it at equinox, solstice, you get more yet. So each time you're embedding in a longer wave, making it potentially more implosive, called the next dimension, which is the next density, which is the next spin.
No, my takeaway actually is negative entropy.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, like that. You start the more of those states that you incite, the more life, the more space there is for life in all things, And I think that's my takeaway. That's the beautiful thing I heard there.
So that's why
Agnihotra's great. I loved it. I will start doing it again.
Yeah, it really.
I like the idea. I like the idea of ley line confluence points as the location to do it at.
Yeah. It gives you leverage on tornadoes. That's why all of the advanced civilizations, Templars, they say restore your fractality in time. Well, now you know the physics of what they mean. They mean embed the little spin fractally within the bigger spin, and then you can inhabit the center of that lightning bolt. It would also teach your children that they might need to learn some Sufi dance and pattern recognition and dowsing and magnetic line maps. And your architect needs to make a magnetic map of the line to find the center of the rose before planning your house. There's a lot of things to learn here.
Yeah. Look, I actually like the idea of that negative entropy pyramid.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what scale you build it at, but getting that right would like you could have that. Sorry, and I really think that's what temples were designed to be in the first place.
Exactly.
But after some time, it looks like my religion's going to claim that square on the chessboard, and I'll build my kind of church there. And everybody's out there doing it. You get, we were doing ley line maps years ago, and then I asked somebody to plot the Buddhist temples and the Christian churches on that map, and yeah, it was an absolute it was an absolute
Yeah, because that's where the
gulf.
leverage is. Sacred space
Yeah,
required. And the thing is now, as we've at the bioarchitects.net and our biologic architecture curriculum, and we have dozens of films now, we've shown that's all very measurable. If you build a place of bamboo and it looks like a fractal, and you take the frequency signature of the capacitance of the center with our brainwave device, flameinmind.com, life force measure, you can predict in advance which building will cause a seed to grow. And the frequency signature you're looking for is exactly what we just described, PlanckFire.com, the phase conjugate pump wave, Schumann cascade, etc. So that implosive charge collapse defines life force in buildings and seeds. And it's very, very measurable. We say that will define which architect deserves a paycheck after you measure afterwards if there's life force in that building. And by the way, if it's full of aluminum and steel, it ain't going to work.
I did have one other story that I wanted to tell. And when you talk about buildings giving life, and it brings me back to Archaics research. You know that guy? Archaics, Jason Brashears?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Look, he says that you go to these cities and you'll find two kinds of buildings. You get the ones that are made out of glass and steel, and then you get the older ones that are made of highly embellished stonework, right?
Yeah.
And he would say that they're two different tech trees. And I think he's right, because none of those, and he does go a lot and say those buildings weren't built, they were founded, they were found. Somebody walked up, I'll write a contract and say this thing's mine. And without anyone to contest it, they're right.
But you know that all
But
the ancient buildings were made of high dielectric material. Steiner was right. The children should only touch living fabric, stone, and wood. So that these are materials called high dielectric in which your aura can breathe. Versus the opposite. You hold a piece of aluminum or steel in your hand will go numb. You need to understand why. It's because your capacitance cannot breathe through it. And so your child cannot grow their aura. So the steel on your roof is preventing your dreaming for the same reason. It's called dielectric constant. Every molecule that was once part of life learned to breathe charge. It's called high dielectric. That's why orgone works, the high dielectric. It's charge distribution efficiency. And that defines what building can allow your aura to unpack and have bliss. So the steel and aluminum and electrosmog in modern buildings are literally stealing the souls of your children.
yeah, I can't say I'm surprised by that. And at the same, it's also like when I was a kid, they were really, really banging on about rubber-soled shoes, just so that you'd never ground, so that rubber would
Yeah.
break the electrical circuit. And I was really, and later on in life, I realized like anything that makes the mainstream, anything that's long and loud in the mainstream, you should just do the opposite. Whatever they want, just do
It's
the
sort of,
opposite.
there's a neat story. It's an ad for one of these grounding bed sheets, and the parent is
Mhm.
saying, "Our baby was crying all the time, and the only time our baby ever stopped crying was when we walked barefoot in the grass." And then later they discovered that's called grounding. The baby, remember in the movie
Yeah.
Beautiful Green, the babies are the source of energy because so access to ground is access to Schumann cascade, is access to implosion. So when you isolate yourself from ground, you are John Denver singing, "Life in a high rise makes you hungry for something you can't even see."
They're genius.
Yeah. So this is the experience that all of this is about embedding into the Schumann, which is implosion, which is phase conjugate grounding, which is fractality in time and in spin. And this is the hygiene that requires us basically, of course, as I always says, get the hell out of the city. No, I mean, find a place where you have access to Schumann. Schumann is a weak field. It doesn't make it into most urban areas, unfortunately. Although if you're good at making magnetic maps, there are some places like the Rose magnetic map of Prague where we did lucid dream, actually. But anyway, so do either of you guys do any dowsing sometimes and like locate the leverage for the dreaming and the shamanism?
Oh no, no, I see it. Like I walk around and see those things. Like if you know you got these different scan levels, you go, oh, okay. And
Oh,
you know,
good.
I did a lot of study, but now I'm teaching online, and I teach people to a really high level.
That's
Like
good.
a lot. Like I've given birth. I've taught some really strong operators out there. You know, like they're out there, you know, making things happen for the earth.
That's great.
And our teams have now got, I count, 4 spin-off teams.
Oh, that's great.
Like I'm really into the combat and conflict things, but these guys are all about. I'm anti dark work or anti death, and these guys are all pro life, and all of those 4 teams are out working more in the direction you're describing.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's understandable. Like most people don't want to be involved in conflict; they're not into it.
but
It's not for everybody.
your story is beautiful about when you see clairvoyantly these things. Our friend Stefan Cardinal, who's a very leading geobiologist, goldenmean.info/geobiology, he had a axial adjust, a neck tilt adjust, and started having intense kundalini, and then his clairvoyance
Off his life.
unpacked. And he could see all of these magnetic lines actually with clairvoyance, and even
Mm,
identified the physics, the frequency signature of Hartman, Pei, Curie lines, and which deflected them, etc. So clairvoyance is useful because, among other things, you can actually see the grid, which is a longitudinal array, which
yeah.
is when you have access to bliss experience, it's like those kids start seeing with out their eyes. They had the golden ratio cascade in their brainwaves. Oh, and then they started seeing their ancestors because that is the physics of clairvoyance embedding in that longitudinal array. So, Jake, how are we doing for happily ever after here? Was that
Sounds great, man. It sounds great to me.
yeah. And when you teach people to get coherent in the astral, you think some of these lessons are practically useful as well?
Yes, I do. I believe so.
Yeah.
I'm using the fire ray every day.
Uh-huh.
It's been really amazing.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. So the phi ray is using exactly this Schumann cascade in the plasma and in the magnetic coil, making the world's most powerful Schumann cascade in a coil in phase with the plasma, phiray.com. And it is a dramatic lucid dreaming trigger and astral coherence trigger, as Jake is something of an expert on that. And if you
Yeah,
could,
I've been reaching the highest realms I've ever reached before. I'm calling it the realm of the 7 suns because there are 7 suns up
wow,
in this place.
wow,
Wow.
It's one of the heavenly realms where you can hear the music, which is just frequency, pure frequency music. And I'm getting there on at least 2 times a week, just to relax, just to kind of
wow.
experience a good level of expansion before I come back into this limiting 3D existence
And
here.
that's the music of the spheres. That's great. So you can see, again, we take those frequencies. Those frequencies are literally exactly the only thing that drives firay.com, plasmafire.com, even firecrystal.com, piezofire.com. All our technologies are driven only by that exact frequency cascade we just discussed, Planck times integer multiples of golden ratio fractality perfected, which predicts the Schumann cascade very closely. So when you drive those frequencies, you create that implosion. And that is, by the way, the same as the frequency signatures of our world's most powerful bliss binaural audio at flameandmind.com, which is called Flame and Sound on the App Store. So that is simply a way of experiencing implosion. And we're not saying you need a gadget to do it, but you do need nature to do it, actually.
Mm. No, no, I've been around those gadgets before. Like it spooked me just how high voltage I was at that time. Like just how much I had, how
And
far I could have gone, how wild it was going to get. Yeah.
and we're
I've
having
been I've been doing remote healing sessions, and I go in the machine, I go in the frequency of the phi ray in order to, go through the astral projection in order to go to the person to do the remote healing. It gives me a ton more energy. The recovery time is, cut in half. So I'm really enjoying it.
nice. And you can see why we're actually with the fire. We actually give away the firecrystal.com, PHIRE, firecrystal.com. And we're getting many reports that just with that amazing quartz crystal alone people are getting lucid dreaming triggers dramatically. I mean, dramatically near their bed. And we know exactly why. You cut a crystal, firecrystal.com is accurate. The sides are parallel, not tapered like Vogel. He didn't get it quite right. But the firecrystal.com precisely tunes that phase conjugate pump wave to implosion and is flat on one end and the perfect pyramid point at the other. And that makes it directional longitudinal plasma projecting. So when that's pointing at water, you get the flavor effect the same way you do with phi ray. Or if it's near your bed, people are getting such dramatic lucid dreaming triggers actually that some people, if you don't want to lucid dream that night, you move it away. And we know why. It's a compression wave, and the body gets access to a compression wave. It implodes more efficiently and then propagates, converting transverse into longitudinal to embed in that array. And that's what was called the dream spell and dreaming track. So now that we're understanding more about how that array, which is DNA radio, the physics of telepathy and ancestor memory, and the physics of dowsing, the physics of the Earth grid, it's all about coherent longitudinal interferometry. Now we can teach as scientists what used to be called mystical, and we can do it better. So
yeah, look, there's plenty of ways to augment what we're doing through science. Like what it makes what I'm teaching old fashioned actually.
well, but actually, you guys have the intuitive skill. I mean, I have some clairvoyance, but you guys have wonderful skill. I admire that skill. So I recommend to everyone the actual teaching school. So Jake is doing active work teaching people how to get coherent in the astral. I highly recommend. Jake is at Astral Orma on YouTube and also your Patreon.
Is Astral Irma.
Astral Orma. And
Yeah.
remember, the Orma, these guys are kick butt in the astral, and that's exactly what we need if we're to deal with the nothing. And Alobar, do you want to just tell people how to reach your school as well, again?
Look, I've got my course is listed on earthguard.world, but if you give us your email, you'll get something called the 15-minute modality. And then if you, which I just give away for free, just so you can feel that there's actually something going on out there as a tester. And then I also release my course on crystals. I just released it the other day. So, get a taste, get the free taste, get the cheap taste. And then if you like all of that, you might come and join me for the year-long astral projection course. And if you put the work in, like we get masters out of that. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
this is powerful and necessary because as a planet, we get an immune system as a planet from interstellar parasites like the nothing.
Yeah.
We get an immune system as a planet when we have large groups doing this actively and coherently and together. And this also relates to our luciddreamteam.com that Jake is in part of and now Dahlia is helping coordinate. So all of these projects together, we create an immune system because we create that bubble of coherence that sorts the parasites instead of a bubble of isolation. That's the goal.
Yeah. Look, we're much stronger than our opponents. We're much stronger than our oppressors. Like, all we need to do is actually stand up
Exactly.
against them, and their fate is concluded. Like, it's over for them.
Well said.
And we didn't, like, I actually think they brought the moon in because Earth was so much trouble. Earth was going to be a problem. I don't think every system they invade gets one of those Death Stars, but we did because we're a real problem.
And
We don't want to go into the night and come and join us. This is where it's at.
yeah, so we could, as we always said, we're a vaccine for the Orion Wars when we wake up, because we can hold the bliss and the love that keeps us at the center of tornadoes and the centers of the lightning bolts, and then we are fractal in time. So, on that
Yep.
note, thank you guys. It's been really fun. Thank you, Jake.
My love to you all. It's always good talking to you guys. Yeah.
Thanks for your courage, you guys. Let's do this
All right.
together. More to
Stay well,
come.
folks.
Blessings. See you
Ciao.
soon. Bye-bye. Ciao.